So, continuing the science fiction theme with batteries not included. Drew, what's that all about?
Well, Batteries Not Included is a delightful little tale of how some cute little aliens, looking like miniaturised versions of the classic flying saucer-style UFOs, come to the aid of some people in a tale reminiscent of the elves and the shoemaker. Well, I say delightful. I mean horrifying. At least when you add in the poverty, dementia, corporate thuggery, immoral businessmen, sports-derived brain damage, assault, stillborn babies, arson and attempted murder.
But apart from that...
Cheery. In a plot point lifted from Herbie Rides Again and reused in Up, Pixar's Brad Bird, part of the creative team in Up, was one of the writers for this film. An unscrupulous real estate magnate finds that his plans for his towering new development in New York's East Village are endangered by the final holdouts, the tenants of the final extant tenement building. These tenants are the pregnant, soon-to-be single mother Marisa, Elizabeth Pena, artist Mason, Dennis Boutsikaris, simple-minded Superintendent Harry, Frank McRae, and Frank and Faye Riley, Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy, the oldest residents and proprietors of the cafe house on the building's ground floor. They have been bribed and harassed, but won't leave. And now, with permit and tax deadlines looming, the developer has sent in Michael Carmine's Carlos, a thug who aspires to upward mobility, to force them out. After their restaurant is trashed, a dejected Frank considers leaving for a retirement home, something he does not desire to do, but considers maybe for the best, especially as Faye is suffering from advanced dementia. During the night, though, visitors arrive. From outer space! Sentient, metal-based life forms who are looking for power and supplies in order to start a family. These little fellas are dab hands at repair and fix up much of the damage done by Carlos and his goons, giving the tenants renewed hope and new allies. As the cute little extraterrestrials help out in the restaurant and around the building, things take a far darker turn than you might expect, with the revelations of dead children, now and in the past, fears for soon-to-be-born children, the difficulties of watching your partner being lost to the perniciousness that is dementia, the poor, elderly and vulnerable being largely abandoned by society, and if that weren't enough, a greedy businessman willing to have someone's home burnt to the ground so they don't have to pay more tax, and not caring much whether or not they're at home when the fire starts. There's a bit more too, in this children's film about sweet little toy spaceships. For the most part, the effects stand up. There's some really charming puppetry and models used for the fix-its, as the aliens are dubbed, and aside from some terrible fake photographs in the opening sequence, made to look even worse when juxtaposed with genuine photographs of Cronin and Tandy, married in real life for more than 50 years, the only real problem is with the matting, which, to be fair, still has the potential to look incredibly dodgy today. But it's the story that's compelling. It would be very easy for this to be corny or cheesy, and it's perhaps Dennis Boutsikaris' tortured artist that comes closest to breaking the tone, not aided by the cartoonish take on his electrocution. But for the most part, the cast play this earnestly, with Cronin and Tandy adding real gravitas, and even Michael Carmine allowed to imbue the broadly written Carlos with a little depth in character progression. I'm quite pleased that we finished with Batteries Not Included, though I'll admit that's not entirely chance, as for me it's the best film we've talked about in this episode. Like the best family films, this works on a level for children and a different level for adults, with some crossover, though given its themes and topics it definitely tends much more towards the adult side of things. By which I probably mean cute little robots aside, this is probably horrifying for kids. Though I have no recollection of that from my childhood, so maybe that other stuff just sails over your head if you're otherwise unfamiliar. So what am I saying? Well, for me anyway, the best kids film in this selection is very much the one really not for kids. What a conclusion.
Yeah, before you'd put this forward for this episode, I guess I would never have really thought of Batteries Not Included as a kids' film in particular. I'm not quite sure why. I can only presume it's because I remembered it and remembered the content of it and thought that can't possibly be a kids' film. But it's not wildly dissimilar, I suppose, from E.T., which I saw. I also watched as part of this just to get a sort of frame of reference because I don't know, there's always a part of my brain that thinks that E.T. is a kids' movie for kids, and I shouldn't love it, but it is just really fantastic. And of the films we talked to, this is the closest that's in that league. Obviously, there's the Amblin Spielberg executive producer involvement. I don't know quite how involved he was with the production of this, but this is Spielberg quality, I would say.
Let's not forget Spielberg's also involved with the Goonies, so it's not doesn't always work.
that's true, and Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Yes, but anyway, of good Spielberg, this is up there with it. To be honest with you, I absolutely love this. I hadn't seen it in ages, and to be honest, it's something I'd not even really thought about in a good long time either, which is a real disservice to it because it's absolutely fantastic.
No, nor had I until that podcast I mentioned right at the introduction, Scott. That is what had brought it back to mind. And I thought, oh, I should revisit that. I was like, oh boy, this is dark.
Yeah, and not just dark, but it's really, really well crafted with some really sort of really great character work and a really great story underpinning it all. And yeah, it's perhaps a bit simplistic, but it's in terms of the kind of overarching narrative, but it touches on so many kind of real deep human traits and emotions that it's surprisingly deep for something that is basically about aliens coming to fix things, but it's not really about that at all. And it's a really quite dark and twisted and complicated work in a number of regards, and it's really, really, really good. I don't know if this is just us, but I really had not really been considering this at all as a kind of top tier film in quite some time, and I think that's really doing it a great disservice. It is a really well put together and a really well thought out bit of filmmaking that deserves a lot of attention on it, and if that hasn't been getting it, then it really should.
You said you hadn't really considered this as a kids' film. I did, because I remember watching it as a kid, which that helps a lot. And I remember little robots and things, but I don't remember from all of those years ago the other content, or at least the real kind of the tone of the content.
Yeah. It's like, it's a film that has a stillborn alien in it. I mean...
Whereas, because of the film, the podcast that I mentioned, I watched it again at that point, and because I remembered so little of that tone, the darker stuff, and I realised, oh yeah, this is actually really good. So going to it for this episode, I knew that it was really good.
Yeah.
Which is why when I was putting together the list of films for this was the first one in. This was actually the one I really wanted to talk about, because I knew how good it was and how surprising it was to me to find out it was so good. What I'm just really pleased about is you feel the same.
Yes.
That has really pleased me, because I was slightly concerned, like, oh, I hope it's not just me. But no, it's really heartening to hear that you've enjoyed it as much as I did.
No, it's head and shoulders above everything we've spoken to here. There's films here that I've really enjoyed, but they're just enjoyable films for the most part.
Karate Kid, really solid, enjoyable, good characters and stuff, but yeah, it doesn't compare to this, does it?
Yeah, no. Thematically, and the way it's shot, the way that it's executed, the performances, this is on a entirely different level, and it is really, really great. And I'm very thankful that you have this has been added to the list, because I probably would not have thought about this film again, possibly ever. Although presumably I would, because I'm subscribed to the Perfect Waste of Time podcast, but I'm well behind in my listening, so I'd probably get to it eventually. But this is a really great film that deserves an awful lot more of attention than I'd been giving it, certainly, and presumably in that regard, if you're anything like me, you should be giving it. So yes, definitely give this a rewatch if you've not done so. I had definitely seen this film. It's one of the films that I remembered, because I remembered those cute little almost Smash alien type robots, and
there's a wee bit of the Smash alien to them.
Yeah. So I did remember those quite clearly, but I just remembered like a still frame of those robots and going, oh, they're cute, and apparently nothing else about everything around it. And it does make it an awful lot more of an enjoyable film. It's not just a film with cute little aliens in it, it's also a film with some really deep messaging and some terrific performances, both from Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin. Really touching, really heartfelt turns from all of them. as you mentioned, even the kind of minor throwaway characters get something good to do. The guys that should just be the hired thugs, the muscle of it, even them get a moment to sort of try and redeem themselves and become better persons towards the end of it. It's
I find the film's actually quite hard on Carlos because yes, he's an unpleasant person, and he's intimidating these people to force them out of their home. But he's the one, like, towards the end of the film, when the arsonist gets brought in to replace him because Carlos has failed.
Yeah.
It's Carlos is the one that asks, is anybody in?
Yeah.
Whereas clearly the arsonist doesn't care. He hasn't actually checked. And then it's Carlos that risks his own life to save Jessica Tandy, and then he tries to do the right thing of, like, all this time she's been thinking that he's her son.
Yeah.
And then there's almost a heartbreaking moment when he tries that to save her and she realises, oh no, he isn't. And he doesn't get a break at the end either. So it's like, this is a horrible thug character, but I kind of feel sympathy for him at the end too, because he's tried to do the right thing in the end.
Yes.
And then not once but twice, because it happens in the hospital too, that incredibly touchy moment when she just breaks down on Hugh Cronin's shoulder.
Yeah.
He doesn't get like a good payoff, but almost everybody else in the film gets a satisfying payoff, and he doesn't, and maybe doesn't deserve it. But there's surprising depth in there.
Yes, absolutely. It is really great. It's unexpectedly become one of my favourite films. I will need to go back and revise certain lists that I don't actually keep. But
I'm so genuinely pleased that you've enjoyed it as much as I did. That's really, like, I was concerned about that. Not overly concerned because I know you've got a good taste, but so I was like, I've put this in here because I know how good this is, and I'm going to finish on this, and like, but I don't know, you like it, so that's good.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
Absolutely finishing off on a high, I would say.